early today. It's lecture number 8. So last week I gave a very broad summary of my point of view of what a technology startup is and the role it fulfills and kind of how it works. And I mentioned we were going to have 2 more live lectures, so it's today and then Monday, 2 weeks from now. You're going to be focused on 2 very important things with a startup: commercialization and team. So just one slide about what we've talked about last time. The topic of commercialization came around identifying customer and validating that they're going to be customer. I mentioned that for that to happen, they have to pay. And we had a very detailed discussion in being careful, not over-promising on these first contracts. And if you can, you want to over-deliver. If at all possible, at least have a very good communication with that customer that this is the first time you're doing this and that it's very useful. So one thing that I've brought up is you have to identify those customers that what you're planning to build, or whether it's a service, a product, or anything, is so useful to them that they are willing to do a little bit of a co-investment there up front. So they're willing to go spend some money and spend time with you, so you are able at the end of the day to help them with their pain. If they don't have pain, they'll be interested, but they're never going to pay, especially not ahead of actually, having a real solution. So it's very, very important when you do customer interviews very, very early on to read between the lines. In other words, you don't want to say, so if I have it ready next year, would you be interested to use it and pay us for it? And say, yeah, we'll consider it. That doesn't mean anything to you. You don't even put it in your notebook. It doesn't matter. What you want to get into is what would be the reasons, what would be the drive for them to do anything. So that's really what you need to focus on, and essentially it's you convincing yourself or determining yourself their likelihood that they'll do something. And that's essentially called qualifying a customer. It's your job. It's not their job. So when you go through this journey, I think I was very clear and blunt on that last time. It's going to be tough. If you have the ability to take every big pain, every hurdle in your journey as an opportunity to learn, that's a big part of how you're going to be successful. So if you make a big mistake, but take it as, well, I'm glad I did that mistake today as opposed to 6 months from now, for example, and then just move on from there. So accept what happened and readjust your plan and keep working hard. So that was a little bit what we've talked about. So for commercialization strategy today, I decided to go ahead this morning and I put these bullets together. The same way as last time, it's my thought. It doesn't have to be what you learned from the class. It's my opinion that commercialization, even if it's a great technology, is the most important part of doing a startup. It involves everyone in the team, whether they like talking to people, don't like, and all have the skills, introvert, extrovert, you name it. They have to be involved directly or indirectly with the process, and they should be asking questions to the sales team and everybody that actually speaks to the customer. Typically, as a result, the first people actually making sales are part of the co-founder team. And that is where I mentioned to you very, very clearly that it is my recommendation that if you're going to be doing something and you are not anywhere near with the interest of becoming a salesperson, then you need to find somebody to team up with them because it's so important. Just the idea is not going to take you very far. Okay, this is a little bit this acknowledgement that if you're developing a product or service for a new market, something that people are not used to do the way you're planning to do it. You're not going to have this nice growth curve where first sales lead to another sale and another one and another one. Everything goes well. So there'll be people coming at the very beginning with the interest, wanting to see what you have, willing to put some money on it, and then they'll watch because they'll have to think about, they'll have to talk internally, especially if you're dealing with big organizations, and they're going to watch you on how you do with the other customers and things like that. So it has been our experience with MMT. We had customer come in and place a first order, and then the most useful thing that we've had is we kind of suspected that would happen, so we were working with other customers. So we essentially extended that first phase by having a series of 4 or 5 customers coming one after the other and us getting better each time, essentially. So I put some dates there. December 2016 is when we really had a peak. We sold for $200K of services in a 45-day period, and then it was 3 different customers, and then whew, everybody took a break. And we had some sales in 17, but it was kind of the anxiety period. It's like, don't know where it's going, and they don't know what to do with you either. And last fall, it really started picking up, and now we have a lot of inquiries for work, just a few months down the road. So our sales cycle has shortened, and these are all good signs, but it also means we have a lot of work to do. And we have to stay focused. So I brought up these charts in the first 6 hours of this class. I decided to bring it back in because most startups do fail. And if you look in the percentages, 36% of the failures are specifically 36% of the failures are specifically for building something that the customer is not willing to pay for it. Second reason is hiring friends and going by a qualification as opposed to skill and motivation and all that good stuff. Lack of focus, and that's interesting that it's green. Because why I say that this the grass is greener, on the neighbor's yard. So, keep finding something that maybe is going to be easier to do than what you've already worked on. Because it always looks easier in the first place, and then when you get into it, you're like, it's really going to happen. Okay, so the one slide that I would like you to remember is this one. You do have to have a business model for what you're going to be generating. And at the very center of that model is the value proposition. What pain are you going to address on the customer? And how is that going to influence the health, the profit, and everything? So the value proposition doesn't have anything to do with your technology, your company, or anything like that. It's your customer. And it takes a long time to understand that. For me, I was totally 100% engineer, and I was very, very minded. I mean, the good thing is I was very, very passionate about the idea that we would make this useful. So when this reality came in, from our sponsors, that we had to think about it from a customer's perspective and really start doing all these interviews. It took me a couple of months to really kind of learn how to do it because you have to get some gears and be willing to forget about yourself and go out. Discovery, right? Customer discovery is the big word. And first principle is that you should not fool yourself. And yet, you're the easiest person to fool. We could have an entire hour on this. That's what the NSF did with us, showing a bunch of examples of great stuff that just never made it to the market. I spent about an hour on the first 6, so we're not going to spend a whole lot of time. This is just a kind of very, very quickly going back to this. So related to that, one advice, though, it's an I-Corps over there is a free service. You can actually get a check to pay for your expenses. If you have an idea and you want to engage with customers, they train you. It's here at MIT. It's sponsored by the National Science Foundation. I can give you the director's name, or at least somebody involved if you ever consider something like that. Okay, so the advice I had that I think is very valuable is you do not need to think big if you're thinking about your first customer. I said the criteria is them writing a check. Of course it has to be, you know, a multi-million-dollar opportunity. But you don't have to start thinking that all of a sudden you're going to go in a customer product and you have to build 100,000 of these things right away. So the idea is it has to be big enough, but also you have to identify the people that are willing to step ahead very, very early on. So they call them the early evangelists. And I mean, essentially, it's the people that not only have a problem, but they know they have it. That's not always the case. And they have been working already. They've been looking for a solution. And when they see you, they're like, oh, this is great. Turns out last year I put a budget because I told my management I have a problem. So I'm going to be looking for a solution. And you happen to be that solution. When that happened, you put a good note in your notebook. It doesn't matter if your product is ready. You know that person is essentially ready to write a check if you convince them that you're going to help solve the problem. All right, so I know you guys like example. I'm going to go real fast through what happened with our case study for the class MMT. And that's essentially kind of as of today, more or less, or as of 6 months ago. I made a very big commitment that I'm not going to talk to you guys about anything that I don't really know, and validated myself. So that's why I want to have a little bit of a leeway here about the things that we've been working on the past 3 to 6 months. This is the slide that we were presenting to customers back 3-4 years ago. We had nothing, okay? This is a made-up box for somebody else that we put our name on it. Nothing. But they were like, oh, come to the meeting. You know, we'll fly you over or whatever, you know, and we want to tell you about what's going on with us, and we want you to put a proposal together and those sorts of things. So, you know, you're like, okay, good. You know, we're going to be able to have a discussion. Because emails, yeah, you know, you get a little bit done. Phone calls, better. In-person meeting, gosh, you know, you're really into engaging, and that's very, very key. We had a lot of in-person meeting before we got much done in the lab, actually. All right, so the idea here was instead of having to use the flame to cut a piece of pipe, send it to the lab to do a strength testing, we're going to do it right there on the pipe. Okay? So it's appealing because now they don't have to do service interruption. They don't have to repair the pipe when it's done. So we were presenting this, and what we were selling is testing strength and ductility. So it's a hardness, strength, and ductility tester. It works with frictional sliding. We don't have to get there. Now, when I was talking about listening to the customer, something we did, because this is what we were hearing all the time. This is great. I want it. But, you know, at the end of the meeting, it'd be always, but would you have something at all, or would you consider doing something for fracture toughness? Fracture toughness. It came over repeatedly with those customers by the time that we were just sitting down, and they trusted us. Like, we want this, but we really, really need, we must have the other one type of situation. So anyway, for better or worse, we did make 2 tools, mostly by listening to that feedback. So one of them is to do the equivalent of a tensile test. The other one is to do the pre-crack specimen and determining essentially how much energy it takes to actually fracture the thing. So one is a wedge tool that takes a chip off. That's the new tool. It's under development. It's making money, but it's essentially testing in the lab. It hasn't got any blind tests or anything like that. And this is essentially commercial at this point, using frictional sliding to measure strength. So this second piece of us was not really the grass is greener. It was listening to our customers And it's always been a factor for them to continue sponsor us with whatever we do. So they like us because they know we're listening, and we're going to make, at the end of the day, we're going to be the place that they want to go to get answers to what they're looking for. So what's the world according to our customers? They have 300,000 to 400,000 miles of high-pressure transmission pipeline. These are all steel, mostly buried pipes going across the country to transport natural gas and crude oil product, oil, gasoline, kerosene. So, you know, you have pipelines going to the airport, you have pipeline going everywhere. And when they operate at high pressure, if they rupture, it's a big problem, and it doesn't help with the reputation of the industry. So they have a goal of not having ruptures. Now, when they look into their goal to operate safely, they need to know what's in the ground in terms of crack size, wall thickness, corrosion, and all that. And then you need the associated material properties to be able to determine whether this is a problem or not, whether they have to do inspection and repair. So a very typical repair procedure is the pipeline is running, they'll dig and they'll expose it, and then they put 2 halves of a pipe on top, they sleeve it while it's in service. They cannot interrupt that service, it's too expensive. Let's say a 16-inch pipeline will transport $15 million worth of product each day. So what do you do with it? And also the process of shutting down the pump and starting over again is risky, creates a loading cycle, and they want to avoid it at all means possible. Now there are other techniques. If it's a dent on the pipeline, they'll be able to put a composite wrap around it and secure it that way. But for cracks, as of today, they try to remove it as much as possible. They can lower the pressure. That's a different story. They can lower pressure, come and grind the pipe, put that sleeve, turn it back on. Let's go. So the value for them of making the right decision, so digging the holes where they need to dig them, is pretty significant. So if you, let's say you own 70,000 miles of pipeline, you're going to be able to, with your budget, dig it every, say, 30 miles. That's a long way, okay, between your different sites. So if you dig every 30 miles, where do you dig? Do you dig more on a certain line or less? And what we're saying there with respect to toughness is the value of the material property is actually more important than the crack size. And the industry has worked the problem the other way, where they've developed a lot of tools to look for crack size, but they haven't gone back to get the material properties. Most of those pipes were put in the ground without doing a fracture toughness test because it was brand new, there wasn't any crack, and it didn't matter back then. But over time, you have fatigue cycle, you have stress corrosion cracking, you have a lot of phenomena that essentially weaken the pipe. You don't want to replace it. That would be $2 to $5, $10 million a mile, depending on where you are. So it's completely unreasonable.
To make the pipe right next to it?
So putting a new pipe in the same right of way is a multi-million-dollar a mile operation. So it's extremely expensive. The industry is very sophisticated. They run tools that run inside the pipeline to do this inspection. It's called ILI, inline inspection tool, and they look for crack, they look for corrosion. They help you decide where to dig. The question becomes which tool you run through which line, and that's where the material property can help, because the lines that would be able to tolerate cracks that currently, when they do run the sophisticated tool on the inside, they find so many cracks, now they have to essentially do a lot of digging, and it's extremely expensive. So for what we can do, measuring material properties, I mentioned that we don't need to do the cutout. Here you can do a cutout when the line is in service, called a hot tap. It's expensive, it's risky. There's a safety hazard associated with it, and sometimes this could be a lot more expensive If it's a line that they have to purge the inside so they can't have the gasoline or something like that on the inside, you have to put nitrogen so that these numbers just go way, way, way up. You can do a hydro test. That's what they did on the pipeline in the first place. So they welded it all together. They energized it to see if it will leak or not, and then they went for service. Stopping now, cleaning the line and pressurizing it is a very, very expensive, and it's not environmentally friendly either, because you put water in the line, now you have to take it out. And there's some pipelines that you can't get it out because it's going up and down and things like that. So it wasn't designed to have water in it. Okay, so here's us, same accuracy, non-invasive and opportunistic. You dig the pipeline anyway, so you're going to be looking at verifying what the size of the crack is, doing a repair. Is the opportunity to collect, back collect data that you wouldn't have otherwise. So that's essentially what it does. Now, as far as being a startup for us, they may be very well interested. Now we have to deliver. Okay, so our team at this point, a lot of the guys are trained and certified to be on these construction sites. So there's a lot of safety precautions in terms of preparing for being out there and how you behave in these deep excavation, things like that, looking for if there's any already gas contaminant. And it's been for us the most practical way of moving forward. So when I say practical, by us bringing our tool to the pipeline, we haven't had to try to train somebody else on a training program that we didn't have in the first place anyway. So if you look at 2017, we didn't really have training certification. So we're going out there, and it didn't work for us. We had issues. So we came up with a real training certification program in 2018. And that was for training our guys. It was very, very intense. But by the time it got done, we were ready to roll for the season. And now this year, we're simplifying the procedure. We're making it clearer. We're reducing the time, improving the software and all those things. We can finally take our baby and give it to somebody else for use in the field. So I'm sure there are very creative way that would have done other ways. One would be, of course, to team up with an inspection service provider, so somebody that already have 100 people ready to go. But they all wanted this and this and that. The big word is exclusivity, and the other word is, exclusivity, exclusivity, and exclusivity. Those are the three things they want. They want one for a very long period of time, and they want one for as big of a market as possible, and also, of course, they want you to do a lot of work and they make the money. Yeah. So if you happen to be more lucky than I've been dealing with these big companies, next time around I'll hire you. Just show me what you've done, because it's just a very, very hard process. When a very large organization, they have their focus, right? This is how they make money today, and it takes them all their energy to keep that going. So when you come with something new, they don't have really generally a real mechanism to embrace it and to capture the value 2-3 years from now. I mean, they have to make it through the year. And for us, we had to make it through years. So this is our revenue chart. It doesn't look at all like this bumpy road that I've showed you. And it's not that we fudged the numbers. But it is essentially kind of the timing of where things came up. So we had work very late in 16, and that kind of made for that first number here. And then 17 was very steady, and 18 just started kicking at the very end of it. So it's just worked out. So when we showed that to investors, they're like, oh, it's incredible. It's not quite incredible. Because as of today, we sold for $2 million worth of this testing service, and we're not adopted except by about 2 or 3 customers. And those customers are these early adopters. They saw the value, and they are benefiting from it already, okay? It's not that they're investing in the future. They're using it today. But it's not this supersized organization, and there are people that were so looking for this to happen. They were ready, and that's why they were able to say, this is going to become my new standard practice. Now we have to work with customer number 4, 5, 6, and some of these are much bigger, and it takes more time. So what we have that is working for us today is we perceive as the hub. We're the guys that started talking about really doing these tests in ditch with accuracy, reliability for use into doing this, and we're talking to the regulators who essentially establish what are the minimum requirements for operating pipelines safely. We're talking to the guys that operate the pipeline, so the oil and gas companies, and then we're talking to the other service provider that do inspection. And we don't know anybody else that's as tangled into this entire industry as we are. Now, again, it doesn't mean that the battle is won. So this actually comes on LinkedIn from probably our best potential customer. So number 4, like a really, really big company. And I thought it was interesting. So to make a change in a big organization, you need vision, skill, incentives, resources, and a plan. And there's a very, very clear, what happened if you're missing one of those. And it's so funny. I mean, if you don't have a vision, yeah, you're confused. If you don't have the skill, you're anxious. That's what happened to us in 2017. If you don't have incentive, well, there's resistance. And we see that a lot, actually on campus here with MIT personnel. If you don't have the resources, you're frustrated because you know you could make everything happen if only you had budget. And then if you don't have an action plan, you're going, but it's going to stall. So anyway, that's something to keep in mind. And I have to say, I printed out, and I'm sure I'm bringing it to the team, and we're going to try to figure out the best way with our customers to help them in their journey of making this successful. Because that's our job, and that's what I voice always on one-on-one. We're going to make this useful for you, for your goals, operating safely the pipeline. That's what we're doing. All right, I'm glad that I was able to go through that quickly. So I'm all done with the MMT examples. Maybe we can take some questions on that because we're going to move on. This worked out well. I guess it's Monday morning. So. Questions? Commercialization? Trying to get customer to pay and pay again? Yes?
Yeah, how was the sort of the first approach when you initially guys have the idea? How was the best, or your experience of going to talk to the the first customers, or how do you kind of sort of target it? What segment are you going to approach?
Very good. So the question is how we proceeded from the ideas to actually talking to customers. We were at that point sort of, using a shotgun approach, just trying to go everywhere and see if we could get something done. Didn't work. So we ended up, most of the relationship we've built were by an introduction through somebody that knew somebody in those oil and gas companies. That's 90% of how we were able to start. And I go through that in details actually in about lecture 4 or 5, how to prepare these emails to people that are willing to help you if you don't waste their time, if you find a way to make their time productive. So somebody trained me to do that, to prepare a very, very short email with, this is MMT, this is what we would be able to provide, this is what we need today. Like just 3 paragraphs, 2 sentences each, with some information, and just like a 10, 15-minute call, and then it pushed you one way or the other. And it turns out for pipelines, because everybody was talking about verifying material, that by the time we knew the language, we learned how to get their attention. And some of the very basic questions that I remember asking is, where can I meet you? And then it's all these conferences start showing up, and then you just have to buy a ticket and just assume it's going to work for you. So we went to these conferences. submitted a paper, got accepted, didn't pay for a boot, and still got a lot of traction and specifics. So we learned, how much they were paying for doing other stuff, and now we're more able to engage with other customers quickly. So that's about how it works. Yes?
I don't know if it's possible, but can you go a little bit more in details on the technology? I'm working on web, so for my
Yeah.
PhD thesis, so I'm pretty interested.
Okay, so the question was kind of how the technology works. I can definitely provide you information, and our website should have more of it. But if you look at this one schematic, instead of doing indentation, we come down and then we slide under a constant load. So our styluses have a patent way to stay perpendicular to the surface, and our machine applies a constant load. Then we look at the width of the groove that we generate, and it's essentially kind of a contact pressure measurement that we make with 4 different shapes of styluses. They're all spheres. And we do a lot of finite element analysis, and that's how, with those 4 different shapes, we establish a strain amount, a range of strain amount, and we're able to separate between initial yield strength and the work hardening of the metal. And so that on a homogeneous material is plus or minus 5%, as opposed to, say, 25, plus or minus 25, 30% if you only do an indentation test. This one here is different. So the wedge here has a little opening in the center, and what happens is if you take a fork and you go through cheese with it, you may be able to break between the fingers of the forks. It's a little bit what we do here. So we machine off a chip, and in the center it's unsupported, so it's a peel test. And we look at the height, which you see in red is what got fractured. So we looked at how much the material stretched before it ruptured. And we already know its yield strength from the other tests, so we essentially directly measure the fracture energy. And we have a lot of work to do because at this point it's literally just a lab machine. You bring the sample to it and stuff like that. But there's tremendous potential, so we submitted proposals for a number of proposals, but some of them are for additive manufacturing, so it's an issue of having toughness on certain components that are produced by additive manufacturing. We have been very, very careful because the entire market has a lot of uncertainty to it. So we're doing mostly sponsored work. And actually touches on a topic there's a difference between saying the grass is greener, I'm going to focus on this, and what I would call creating real synergy. And there's always some win-win relationship. But for us, let's say we got the Army Research Lab coming in, and they wanted to do a certain things. And it was really just a negotiation to take the funds and make it so that they will get results, but also we get to work on what we need to do, making a tool for the pipeline people. Okay, so we didn't change how we were going to commercially address things, but we were also able to respond to their need and show them our will and intellect to make their problem go away over time. So, and this really becomes a very complex process. Turns out they were happy to see that we were commercial because that's something that a lot of technologies just never did. And by us being commercial already for something, they know when they're ready, it may or may not be exactly the price they want, but we'll be able to push it to them. We'll be able to deliver because we know how to do that. And we know how much time it takes, how many resources, things like that. So we have a lot of credibility built in, and it is a form of synergy. Great question. I kind of spin it around, but yes?
In the future, do you think you will remain mainly in the US, or are we also to expand abroad?
The question was about the commercialization, whether we're focused on U.S. asset. We are working in Canada now, and we may be willing to give more in terms of these exclusivity things to markets that are harder for us to reach anyway. The strategy that's been given to me. So that's an idea. An idea essentially to keep the market in the U.S. very free. But if somebody in Europe is willing to put some money forward and say, well, I'm going to be the first user, I'm going to make it work for you, well, this is money we wouldn't generate anyway. So it may make sense for us to give something like 2-3 year exclusivity. Yep. Okay, well, these were great questions. And actually, it kind of ties into what we're going to cover next. So you have a bunch of market segments. And those numbers are just generic. Again, you want to start small. And some of your criteria is, are they willing to pay the price that's going to work for us? Is there enough volume? How easy it is in terms of technology? I mean, for us, testing a big pipe, well, great, because we can come with a big machine. So if we're thinking about testing something that is just, part of an assembly or very small parts, it'd be a completely different story. But this thing has got, but it keeps changing, right? Because the smallest pipe we would test was 6, and they say, can you test 4, and then 2. So we said, we're not going to test anything smaller than 2 for this year. It is a lot of effort to make those changes. And the reason we're making them today for work in April or May is those guys are ready to go. So there's enough drive for us to justify the effort, but staying focused still. So there are plenty of opportunities. Ideally, you do quantify them. For us, we're very, very semi-quantitative. It's a process that I need to work a lot more on soon as I have time. But as far as the concept of prioritizing, the sales dollar per year and how much. And then you're going to have all these ranges and you want to get over that line where it makes the most sense for you. So to me, it's just a simple way to start thinking about this. And for us, I mentioned about additive manufacturing, and there's no way we can get anywhere close to what we can do today with our pipeline people. And even with the pipeline, we know much better who to target for this year and who's most to target for next year and the following year, because we spent the time and asked questions. Not only to our customers, but other people in the industry that know them and kind of know who comes first, who comes second, who comes third. So that's really helpful. So you cannot have too many friends. All right, commercialization. This is actually a series of lectures. I'm taking a few from them, from Downbreaker, who's been doing a lot of services for the National Science Foundation for their small business innovative research. So they've seen a volume of things go well and not well. So they've built essentially these guidelines, and we're only going to go through a few things. Gatekeepers, so that's within every organization. You'll have somebody at the end of the day, his job is to make sure that you satisfy enough of their need before they really spend more time with you. When you've identified those people, you're in good shape. They do exist, and sometimes it's obvious, sometimes it's not obvious. So if that gatekeeper at least is supportive, it's worth spending time. If they're not supportive, you might as well spend more time with other people. It's just the way it is. So it is a very important person from my point of view. I said commercialization is focused on delivering something. And in terms of the strategy, we've talked a little bit about licensing, strategic partnership, which often involves a certain amount of exclusivity, and then doing everything yourself. That was our do-it-yourself. We had that in, one of our options for our business model. So how do you decide how you move forward? You have a mission. I mentioned for you guys, for our company, we got to deliver accurate data, reliable data to help them with the integrity program, with making sure pipes don't blow. That's our company's goal, and they've told us so many times that they need accuracy and reliability of that data, otherwise they're not going to make the right decision. So it's a lot of importance on accuracy, which drives our technology and our QA/QC programs. But other than that, the ball's on their court. I mean, at the end of the day, we're trying to work with the organization, with the different people. So when we think we're going to have a customer, a lot of time I'll have at least 4 people in our company interacting with 4 to 7 people in their company to make this clear that this is going to be a team effort and we're going to make it happen for them. So it's a very, very important process to engage totally with the customer. And but again, on strategy, I talked a little bit what our mission is. What I've been told is the mission doesn't change. And I think it's true. You may find a more clever way to articulate it over time, but the idea is that you start a company, and you hopefully you do have this very clear idea of what is it that you're going to do that's needed, as opposed to somebody else. As far as the vision, I found that very, very useful because it has data. I love stuff with data. So this is again from Don Breaker, talking about different types of visions you can have for an organization. So if you're thinking that at the end of the day, your revenues are going to be 10 million, they call it a lifestyle. So this is their statement, because you have essentially 30 employees or so. You can stay privately owned. And you can stay very, very focused on delivering to a customer or a sales channel. A foundation company would be from 10 to 100 million. And typically will stay private, have a little more people, and is typical if you're doing something completely new. So for example, for us, we do new data service analytics that can be used for a lot of different things. So there is a sense that it'd be hard to find one person that could swallow everything we do and make it as useful for the mission as if it stays as its own entity, essentially. So it's kind of a concept that we have going on right now. Then you have these high potential ventures, so over 100 million, and essentially at that point you are typically really involved in delivering. That's the only reason you become very large. So very, very briefly for each one of those, there's a different route you'll take for financing. But most importantly, in the context of what we've talked about, you have to make decisions all the time. Right? Am I spending time with the customer, or am I spending time with the inspection service company? So in our case, in a more generic sale, with the sales channel, somebody that's going to do the service and deliver for you. They will deliver your technology. And you only have so much time, right? So eventually you have to make those decisions which way you're going to go. And I don't think it's an easy process, but I like this chart because it points on a general sense, depending if you have a niche market that's just all that you're going to do, or whether you're going to have a lot of applications, is influences your type of financing, but also how you partner with other people. So it's simple to set up a contract for a loan. Yet it's very, very hard to do joint R&D and licensing of your product, because at that point you don't control anything anymore. So you need those ripcord, and you need some backup plans, or you need some guarantees that you get paid no matter what. And those are very, very difficult to establish. So that roadmap, depending on what you do, will hopefully put you in a certain category. In other words, if you implementing commercialization for a company, and what you're spending your time on is all over the place here, my suggestion is take a step back and really think this through, because I think of these as, maybe you hesitant between doing a partnership with another company and doing an equity investment. But if you're going from angel investment to licensing, you'll be spending a lot of time trying to establish those relationships, because you're very spread thin at that point. So that's something I've seen others do. And that's why when I got excited with this chart, I'm going to pass it around, because you should know approximately how many applications are tangible over time, and what's your relative risk that you're willing to take. Those should not be completely random. Okay, so I'll defer to say what we're doing on that topic. Next year we can talk about that. So what is key as far as the context of this class is whichever road you take, hopefully you map it out to an extent sufficient that you can identify those roadblocks. There's always going to be a challenge, and the more that you think through what you're planning to do, the more you can identify that point that's going to be your point of risk and identify when that's going to happen and what you're going to do about it. So this is an example here essentially saying you have multiple opportunities. For some of them, you may decide, I'm going to do it myself. Some others, I'm just going to give a license. Some others, I'm just going to give them the equipment and let them figure it out and have some contingencies associated with that. So there's a lot of flexibility. And the goal overall, and this is on the sales set, but I wanted to bring it back in here, is there's so many things out there, and whether it's a customer here or a partner, you have to narrow it down somehow. If all you do is bouncing ideas around, you haven't strained it, funneled it into the real tangible opportunities, then you have to sit and actually start doing that, because otherwise you'll really lose your time and focus. So we'll go through that one later. There are tons and tons, just going to wrap it up and have you guys discuss, of decisions you have to make in terms of commercialization. And therefore, when we had the entire session on startups, I said, you have to be an entrepreneur and be willing to bear the risk. So it applies very, very strongly to the commercialization process. If you think you know for sure, you're probably making a mistake. So you have to admit that there's always risk in every option you take. And therefore, you should take multiple options, but not 10, right? That's not going to be sustainable for your health. So staying focused is another one. But I think that's really about it. Questions, thoughts? Who hasn't asked questions yet? Yes?
Which is the hardest skill you found in your company? I mean, if you think about the chart skills that you showed before,
Yeah.
which would be the hardest in your case? Find like put people together or stay focused or
Yeah, so we started putting a real team together and staying focused in 2015. And it took us 4 years really to make it where we are today. I don't think we could have done it faster, given all the risk involved and you can always feel, I wish I knew this, but it's always going to happen. There's always things you're not going to know. Our core team started with a core that was really, really focused on getting stuff done. We're achievers. We just want to get stuff done. And that's kind of what stayed. And the other people at some point, when it got tough, yeah, they bailed out. And we kept the core. Whether they would be completely, if I was to do it again, of course, I wouldn't be doing it at all the same way, right? Because I've gained a lot of experience. But, we're thinking right now in terms of our next hires, and we don't need them to be perfect. We can't afford that. So there's a certain amount of core strengths that's going to kind of leading into our next session. Certain things that are very, very important, their work ethic, how they want to do stuff, and then other things that really have to be learned, and some of it by trial and error. So that's the beauty of where we are today, where there's certain mistakes we still can't make, but there are mistakes we can afford. And that's a great position for people that work for a company to learn themselves. So my role now is becoming a little bit more of a coach and a counselor sometimes, because we do have challenges. Yes?
Could you explore more the difference between the mission, vision, and business?
Yes. We'll go to that slide on these things you need for the strategy. I did go very quickly, so I appreciate that. So the question was, how do you differentiate those things here? The mission, again, is very, very general. I think that's the one we spend more time on, saying, you know, what are you going to fulfill? What's your value proposition? The vision is the power of your dream. I mean, it's not more than that. If you can't dream it, it's not going to happen, guys. So it's limited by your ability to dream, is your vision. What you think is the likely outcome in terms of revenues, markets, team, sales channel. So it's an interesting one. Your business philosophy, to tell you the truth, that's why they put it in there, but I think it does speak to more your internal strengths. So for us, because I do have a background of technical testifying expert, I can handle some of these issues that they can face with that are beyond what our service provides. So we are comfortable getting engaged in terms of the risk assessment. That's what I've been teaching for the past 10 years. That's what I did for the past 15, 20 years. So it is an internal characteristic that's unique to us that we'll take our skills and put them to the use of the customer. And we happen to have some that are beyond what we do ourselves. So we're broader. I think our business philosophy is we are broader and we can go deep as well. It's the MIT model. We apply that to our company, and it's something that we do have, and it does influence our level of fear. You always have fear, but we can handle more of the fear by having our skills and network and experience. Current situation, that speaks in me more to the customer aspect, so what you know is going on with them, and it also leads these windows of opportunities. One thing that has been going on with us is there's new rulemaking for pipeline safety. It's been voted on, and it is a big part of the driver for people wanting to sit with us and making sure that they can find a way to make that productive for them. So it is there is a timing aspect. It's not just that, you know, they had these pipelines for 60 years. So it just happened they had too many incidents that now there's a lot of attention brought to the topic. If we had this 5 years ago, it wouldn't be as powerful as it is today. And what are the other people doing? So it is part of, you know, you have to think about it. Is there going to be this huge company that's all of a sudden going to say, this is great? And that happens in software all the time. We've thought about it, and there's two things for us, is we're still very small. They can't start focusing on something like what we do. We're the best at doing it. But we do have to think about that, you know, let's say 3 years down the road. You know, who else is going to want to help companies with their aging assets is a concern. So does that make sense? Yeah. Thank you so much. Have a great day.